Hi guys, so my name is Alexis Mangrum-Prokopiof. I go by Lexi. This is my object. This is the Moroccan coin purse donated by Orpha Webster. It is dated to around 1975. It is unclear if that is the date that it was made or if it was around then, because this design has been made prior to 1975 and is still made today and is still very readily available today. So Morocco, a little bit of history about this, has been characterized by its leather production for centuries. The technique originated from the Amazigh people, who are considered to be the original inhabitants of northern Africa. They are originally a nomadic tribe, and they settled in northern Africa in order to helped to create the large trade market that there is today, and it is especially known for its leather works. Originally, the Amazigh people are considered to be the meeting point for the Arabo-Islamic cultures, and when they originally were colonized, they became a hub for their goods and leather goods to be exploited and traded all over Europe. This started in 1884 when the Spanish created a proctorate state, or a protectorate state, and this means that in international relations it is a dependent territory that enjoys autonomy while recognizing a more powerful sovereign state over it for protection. In 1904, the Spanish and the French then divided up Morocco further into different protectorate states. And then in 1912, this all changed again when the French took over Morocco as an entire protectorate state. It isn't until 1956 that Morocco is recognized as an independent and sovereign country. However, because of this repeated colonization, the leather industry boomed all over Europe and all over the world. The oldest tannery that we know is from the 13th century, which is from the Churua tannery, or which is the Churua tannery. It is unclear if this tannery was started in the 13th century or had been previously active, but is just the oldest one that we have record of. This goes to show how popular the industry is. In 2023, it created an industry of about $1.3 billion for Morocco. And in this, for the actual leather making process, it goes through 3 steps. So the first step is the tanning process, which it is soaked in a lime. The leather is soaked in a lime mixture, which is pigeon excrement, cow urine, salt. So it's really harsh, all these really harsh chemicals. And it is then scraped, and the process is repeated for up to several weeks until it is deemed acceptable and clean. Then it goes into the dyeing process, which is mostly natural dyes. So it's dyed, dried, until the color and pliability is achieved. And then we go into the actual leather working process. So the embossing, we have a little bit of that here with that little floral accent on it. And yeah, it's impossible to summarize all of Morocco's history and industry in a 5-minute talk, but this is a great example of it, and I'm so incredibly grateful for our donor for it.
I'm a student here at Miami, and I got to do research on both this cloth right here and the helmet mask right behind you. So just as some background to the area of where this piece came from, it came from the Korhogo in the Ivory Coast. And Korhogo was founded in the 14th century, and it was a very significant cultural and historical center in the area. Being close to the pre-colonial trade route to the Atlantic coast, it has a central place in commerce and cultural exchange. And the Senufu people, which is the region's predominant ethnic group, are guided by Poro Society, which is the socio-religious group that determines rites of passage, moral standards, and legal reasons. And Poro's influence extends across all of West Africa, and it emphasizes the interconnectedness nature of both Korhogo and the surrounding villages, such as Faka'a, where this piece is from. So Faka'a is located around 15 kilometers from Korhogo, and it became a hub for Senufu art during French colonial rule. And development projects in the 1950s created or promoted local crafts to align with tourist ideals and adaptations. And by the 1960s, around when Korhogo and the Ivory Coast gained its independence, they began hosting international events that really enhanced its status as a cultural landmark in the area. So this is the Korhogo mudcloth, and it reflects a fusion of both Sinufu traditions and tourist adaptations. Initially, the mud-based dyeing techniques were used for geometric designs similar to what you see on the border, and it was primarily functional and ceremonial in use. However, under French influence, the designs began to paint narrative scenes and depict wildlife and nature and people. And locally, the cloth served protective and spiritual purposes, such as warding off spirits or protecting Poro hunters. And it was also very integral to Poro ceremonies, and it symbolized continuity and cultural identity. So the elements of this cloth came from suggestions of French teachers, obviously, but they were meant to depict wild domestic animals of the region, such as gazelles, fowls, lions, fish, warthogs, things like that. And the cloth also depicts two Poro masqueraders on the right and left of this piece. And they're wearing leaves on their head, which symbolizes when a member of their lodge has died. And there are two very notable masks used in Poro society funerals, which is the fire spitter mask and the helmet mask, which we have on display behind you. So the helmet mask is carved from wood and is worn by Poro initiates. And it has hyena-like jaws, warthog-like tusk, and antelope-like horns. And it is used to protect the community from spirits or soul eaters during a funeral rite. However, the fire spinner mask, which we don't have in our collection, is still worn by Poro members and still features the animal-like qualities. It is specifically tied to spiritual or mystical practices, and it emphasizes Poro's connection to gods, ancestors, and bush spirits, and ensures the deceased transition from this realm into the ancestral realm without issue. I'm out of breath. So helmet masks are spiritual artifacts that the Sinufu people use during funeral ceremonies to capture the spirit of the deceased, and members of the Poro organization will drum near the home or lineage group of the deceased and prevent the spirit from roaming freely. And it's believed to bring balance back into the community, and the ceremony is essential for preserving the stability of the community because death is seen as a potential threat to this community's stability. So I really wanted to tie these two pieces together, not only because we have the mask over here and we have that in our collection, but just so I could highlight the interaction of transformance and traditional performance in tourist adaptations. Cool.
Hi everybody, my name is Alexa Johnson, and this is the object that I researched in my part in creating this exhibition, which I lovingly refer to as object 2013.48, or as it's known in the collections, traditional dress with sama. There's actually a couple interesting things about this title. First of all, I refrained from calling it a traditional dress in my naming of the object because I feel traditional, you hear it 1,000,001 times when you're studying especially things from Africa, and I felt it was a little bit overdone, especially considering that this dress was made in the 1970s and it has extremely modern sewing notions in the back, so I feel it would be a little reductive and probably not even correct to call it traditional in the sense that someone might think of. Additionally, the word sama is incorrect. It's actually not referred to that as sama in any of the sources that I found. It's actually called a shama. So I'm not sure why it was called that in the collections. I'm kind of forced to assume it was a typo since our donor, Miss Frances D. McClure, actually referred to it as a shama in her many emails that she sent and are on record with information about this dress. But before we get into the more personal information and story of this dress, let's go a little bit into what it actually is and what it's made of. So this dress is made of cotton and lined with an indeterminate fabric. It's either synthetic rayon or actual silk. It is impossible to tell without a burn test, and believe me, I did try to get authorization to do a burn test, and I was not allowed, which is totally fine. But so if the lining isn't really scrutable, the cotton is more easy to scrute, I guess. Ethiopian cotton is a large part of the economy, and it comes from two primary sources, Gossypium arboreum and Gossypium hirsutum, which are two cotton varieties that are widely grown across the country because they have a climate that is very conducive to growing cotton. Ethiopia itself is unique in that it has the second largest population in Africa, and it is also unique that it was never fully colonized. In the scramble for Africa in the early 20th century, I believe. It was never fully colonized, rather it was invaded for a period of 5 years under Mussolini's Italian regime, but it was then returned to its full sovereignty thereafter. But Ethiopian cotton is also, the weaving and beating of the cotton into fibers that are available to spin is actually divided gendered work. The spinning itself is conceived of as women's work, and the actual weaving is done by men. A lot of the weaving is done by looms that are actually sunk into the ground, so there's a pit in which the petals that control the weft and warp threads are sunk into the ground, and the rest of the loom is built on like a more flat ground. Anyway, the cotton production is, as you can see here, very close set, but the cotton that goes into making the shama is extremely fine. And it's supposed to be like that because that's an indicator of its quality. The finer and more translucent the weaving is, the higher quality it is. The exquisite weaving that you see on both the shama and the dress, that is not an applique or a separate woven piece. These are actually inlaid weft designs, meaning that the threads that run this way are still white cotton, and the threads that run this way are multicolored and arranged in such a way that you get these beautiful designs. The designs themselves are actually called tibeb, which I was not able to find an actual glossary of tibeb designs, but diamonds are among them. There's a pattern patterned after the Queen of Sheba, et cetera, but they're very beautiful, and in this piece they serve to show that they are a set, since the patterns match. Also, the shama can be worn in a number of different ways. Many women wear it like over their shoulders as a shawl. I chose to display it like this because I wanted to really make sure that the tibeb designs were visible. So, now that we have a little bit of information on that, let's go into how this ended up in the Richard and Carole Cox Museum's collections. As I said before, this was donated by Frances D. McClure, who was a librarian emerita of Miami University until she retired. And she traveled extensively, especially throughout Africa, and she donated many items to this museum. What she also did was host international students through a program called COSEP, which was involved with the Western College for Women before it was, subsumed by Miami University. And in looking through Ms. McClure's records, I found records of her hosting a woman from Ethiopia, a student by the name of Muluma Bet Girma, who was part of the last graduating class of Western College for Women. She said, I wasn't able to find any actual records of Ms. Girma other than Ms. McClure's emails and letters to us, but based on that, she was the daughter of a well-positioned Ethiopian businessman, and this dress belonged to her. And when she stayed with Ms. McClure for the entirety of her time at Western College for Women, and eventually gave this dress to her. And so I've included her picture on the stand so that it kind of humanizes the design a lot. I really wanted to give a full-sized and proportioned mannequin so that it could be more easily seen for what it is and how it's supposed to be worn. And yeah, that's my object that I researched.